Harry's wife, Big Willy, Chin's Ginge. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Now, before all of you start getting overexcited about thinking, whoa, what's going on? You sound different, HG. I'm in a different location without my usual recording equipment, as I'm away from base HG, and therefore I'm in a location which is a little bit echoey. There's nothing that I can do about that. So if you want videos and incisive observations about narcissism, you're going to have to just deal with the fact that there is a different sound quality and there may be something of an echo to my voice also because of where I'm situated. Housekeeping out of the way, let's get down to business. Well, it's all getting rather exciting as a consequence of the leaks about Spare, isn't it? And who better than to take you through all of this information than your glorious narrator? And we kick off with the news as reported in the Times. William grabbed my collar and threw me to the kitchen floor, claims Prince Harry in new book Spare. The catastrophic relationship between Prince Harry and Prince William, whom Harry calls, by turn, his beloved brother, and his arch nemesis, reached its explosive climax in Spare, with an account of how William attacked his brother and knocked him to the floor. Now remember, both of these individuals have emotional empathy for one another, but as I've made very clear, this doesn't mean that they behave like saints. On the contrary, where there is an external stressor, examples of that would be alcohol, drugs, bereavement, loneliness, illness, financial pressure, stress at work, abuse, a misunderstanding about certain facts. All of those things and others can cause the diminution in emotional empathy, resulting in narcissistic traits such as pride, envy, jealousy, anger, argumentativeness, infidelity, coming to the fore as the empathic traits shrink back. We know that the two brothers once cared very deeply about one another. We saw how good their relationship was, and we've also seen how it has deteriorated as a consequence of that external pressure that has come along from the form of Harry's wife, impacting upon him in terms of manipulating him in order to control him, which has then had a resultant diminution in his emotional empathy for those around him, causing him to act like an arsehole on repeated occasions. Returning to the Times, the Duke of Sussex, 38, alleges that the confrontation took place in Nottingham Cottage in the grounds of Kensington Palace in London after William, now the Prince of Wales, called Harry's wife difficult and rude. Sage judge of character there. He says that it left a visible injury to his back after William, 40, grabbed him by the collar and broke his necklace, pardon me, before knocking him to the floor. The encounter, which took place in early 2019 while Harry's wife was away, began with William coming to ask him to do something about his wife, telling him, "Meg is a difficult person. She is rude, brusque, and has made enemies of half the staff." Those comments, Harry told him, parroted the press narrative about his wife. Now, pausing there, old Ginger Bollocks ought to have thought to himself, hang on a second. My brother, who's always looked after me, who is a good pal, is telling me that my wife is a problem. And I've seen her behaviours, which are a problem. Maybe it's time I did something. Maybe I could ask my brother for some help. It must be serious if my brother's seeing these things and talking to me about them. But Harry's reaction is typical of the intimate partner primary source of a narcissist, where either the individual knows there's some problems but daren't do anything about it, or, in Harry's case, he completely blinded to them as a consequence of being in the grip of her manipulation and his own emotional thinking blinding him. Rather than him think to himself, if William's saying this, and I have seen her behaviours. It's serious. I'm not really sure what to do, but perhaps I could ask him for some help. Instead, because of the manipulative grip she has him in and his emotional thinking, he just turns to think, oh, you're just parroting what the media say about her, essentially demonstrating that he's taken leave of his senses because he can't see what is actually going on. William, of course, as a normal, isn't affected by an addiction to a narcissist, and therefore he sees through the problem. He does see her as rude and brusque and has identified that she's made enemies of half the staff, and he's decided to do something about it by approaching his brother. Returning to the article, in 2021, the Times revealed that Harry's wife faced a bullying complaint during her time at Kensington Palace. It claimed that she had driven out 2 personal assistants. At the time, the couple's lawyers said the newspaper was being used by Buckingham Palace to peddle a wholly false narrative. Recounting the episode at Nottingham Cottage, in the Spanish translation of the book, Harry writes, Willy had not come to debate anything, he had come to lay down the law. Well, that, of course, is Harry's interpretation of it, and he's entitled to put forward his interpretation. He wanted me to recognise that Harry's wife was in the wrong, absolutely the case, and to assure him I would do something about it. This, of course, is often the reaction of a third party affected by the behaviour of the narcissist, and especially William as a normal can see it far more clearly. So he decides, I don't think that I'll get anywhere by approaching her, but I'm going to go and talk to my brother to say, look, she's a problem, she behaves like this, I need you to do something about it. But Harry continues by saying that he thought I'd do something about it. Like what? Call her to order? Let her go? Divorce her? I didn't know, and neither did Willy. This, of course, shows the somewhat dim-witted approach of Harry, whereby he ought to be thinking, she's my wife, she's causing problems with relationships with other people, I just need to sit down and have a conversation at least without it. His reaction, almost to say, what do you expect me to do about it, is an abrogation of responsibility, but also shows the level of his emotional thinking, where he doesn't think there's anything that he could necessarily do about it, or at least try. Remember, he isn't fixed with knowing that she's a narcissist. So it's not a case of him then saying to William, look, she's a narcissist, it's absolutely pointless me trying to tell her because it's a threat to her control and her narcissism will just reject it. He doesn't know what she is. And most people in those early stages try and get the narcissist to see that their behavior is wrong. They try and get the narcissist to correct their behavior. They try and get the narcissist to behave themselves, sort themselves out, and of course do so well-intentioned, but not realizing that it's completely fruitless. Here, Harry is in that group, but he doesn't even make an attempt, which shows the extent of the grip that she has over him. He continued, each time I asked him to relax and tried to see that what he was saying didn't make sense, he raised his voice more. In a short time, we were interrupting each other and shouting. He insulted me. He called me everything. According to a version seen by The Guardian, when William said that he was trying to help, Harry replied, are you serious? Help me? Sorry, is that what you call this? Helping me? The Duke said the comment angered William, who swore while stepping towards him, scaring him, which I find that rather ridiculous. Harry's not exactly 5'2" and made of straw. He's a strapping chap like his brother, and this is the guy that has served in the army for 10 years and, according to other leaks, which we'll be coming to in due course, has killed 25 members of the Taliban. So, are you telling me that you're really scared by your brother advancing towards you? Bollocks, load of horse shit, victim mentality. The recollection continues. Harry went into the kitchen and William followed. Harry writes that he gave his brother a glass of water and said, Willy, I can't speak to you when you're like this. I doubt that actually happened. I just don't see that in my mind's eye. He then tells how William called him another name and then came at me. He writes, everything happened very fast. He broke my necklace by grabbing me by the collar of my shirt and he threw me to the ground. I fell on the dog bowl. It broke under my back and the pieces scratched me. I stayed on the floor a few seconds stunned, and then I got up and told him to leave. Again, I don't find this recollection necessarily authentic, to use one of Harry's wife's favourite words. More likely there'd be a tussle and a fuck you and get out, rather than lying there on the floor with a dog bowl smashed under his back, moaning about the fact that it was cutting him. He then continues by saying William urged Harry to fight back, saying, "Go on, hit me. You'll feel better if you hit me." But he refused. William then left the kitchen, returning a few minutes later to apologise. Note that there is an apology apparently issued. I'd be interested to know, of course, what William's version of events is, but we're never going to get that publicly because he will maintain a silence. Harry writes that William told him that he did not need to tell Meg about this and claimed, "I didn't attack you, Harold." Again, I doubt that this was the case. The Duke reveals that he didn't tell Harry's wife straight away, but did contact his therapist, later admitting to his wife what had happened when she saw the scrapes and bruises. In a separate encounter, William pointed his finger in Harry's wife's face and called her rude for suggesting that Kate's post-pregnancy hormones had made her forgetful and reportedly had given her baby brain, according to Harry's memoirs. I can very much believe that Harry's wife would say such a thing, and of course that's a form of manipulation, whereby she is either directly insulting Catherine by saying that to her face, or, as she said it about her, smearing in an indirect form of control. And of course, William isn't going to stand for an insult being said about his wife. Harry's wife responded by telling William, "If you don't mind, keep your finger out of my face," which of course she would indeed do, as a nullification of threat to control. Harry recalls that William and Kate invited him and Harry's wife for tea in June 2018, only weeks after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's wedding. During the meeting, Kate's apparent forgetfulness about becoming a mother, often known as baby brain, arose as a point of tension between the couples. Harry recalled being amazed by the opulence of their home, with its incalculably valuable artworks and beautiful decor, just exhibiting its envy here, and thinking with embarrassment about our IKEA lamps and second-hand sofa that we'd recently bought in a sale with Harry's wife's credit card on sofa.com. Hang on a second, Harry. You're a multimillionaire, and apparently, according to all of the fucking PR puff pieces that your wife has had pumped out, she was well off and was self-made. So you're telling me that between the two of you, you could just only afford a second-hand sofa from sofa.com bought on Harry's wife's credit card? Bollocks. Again, I see that as a revision of history. The article continues, the quartet sat down to exchange pleasantries about the children and Harry's wife's honeymoon before talking about their relationship, the book says. In a passage translated into English from the Spanish edition, Harry said Harry's wife had brought up the tension between the four of us and said that perhaps it went back to the time when she first came into the family, to a misunderstanding that perhaps they had overlooked. Harry's wife suggested it may have begun with a misunderstanding in which Kate thought Harry's wife wanted her contacts in the fashion world, but Harry's wife said she already had her own. Notice here, this is Harry's wife triangulating and making it all about her, as if to say, "Ooh, perhaps you were a bit envious about the fact that I got all of these contacts and said I didn't need yours." Then she thought things might have grown worse over the wedding and the bloody bridesmaid dresses. Harry added, it turned out they were more things we had no idea about. Well, that's not a surprise, because he's a dimwit, and her narcissism will cause her not to see the various faults that she has. He said, Willy and Kate seemed annoyed that he hadn't given them an Easter gift, even though the brothers had never given each other gifts for Easter. He said he and his wife apologised. Harry and Harry's wife then said they were upset that William and Kate had changed their place cards at the wedding, rearranging the seating plan. That, of course, is a threat to control, but fuck me, these are such terrible problems, aren't they? You didn't get us an Easter present and you moved the table plans around. So those people who are in Ukraine and suddenly seeing their house getting blown up, well, you know, you can at least consider that your problems are on the par with having a place setting changed around. They said someone else must have done it and accused Harry and Harry's wife of doing the same at the wedding of Kate's sister Pippa. Harry and Harry's wife said they had not. I said, she said, he said. The translated memoir then adds, Kate turned back towards the garden and clutched the upholstered edges of her seat with such force that she had white fingers. Said she was owed an apology. Why? Asked Harry's wife. Because you offended me, Harry's wife, Kate said. I beg you to tell me when, Harry's wife replied. Can't really hear her saying that, but anyway. Harry says Kate then explained to Harry's wife, "I told you I had forgotten something, and you replied that it was down to hormones," to which Harry's wife responded, "I promise I don't know what you're referring to." The butler explains that Kate recalled a conversation about wedding rehearsals, and Harry's wife said, "Ah, yes, now I remember. You had forgotten something, and I said it's nothing, it's because of the pregnancy, because you just had a child because of the hormones." At this point, Kate opened her eyes wide, Harry writes, and said, "Yes, you talked about my hormones. We aren't so familiar that you can talk about my hormones." Harry recalls that Harry's wife was perplexed and said, "I'm sorry I talked about your hormones. That's how I speak with my friends." Gripping stuff, isn't it, this? My God, if the rest of the book is in this vein, you'll be asleep within moments reading it. At this point, Harry writes, William pointed a finger at Meg and said, "Well, it's rude, Harry's wife. We don't do things like that here." Harry wrote, "Was this really happening? Had we really wound up like this, shouting at each other?" I don't think anybody was shouting at each other because of switched place cards or because someone had mentioned the other's hormones. In a trailer for an interview with Good Morning America, Michael Strahan, the interviewer asked Harry, "There is a quote in the book where you refer to your brother as your beloved brother and arch nemesis. Strong words. What did you mean by that?" Harry replies, "There has always been this competition between us. I think it really plays into, or is played by, the heir spare." Now, before we get into that, what is interesting, of course, is that we have this recollection of William apparently chinning Harry, which I'm sceptical of some of the claims contained in that. It also shows the petty nature of much that's going on. But the biggest thing that comes out of this is that the behaviour of Harry is so indicative of an individual that has been manipulated into a position of accepting everything that Harry's wife is saying. And this is pretty common with the victims of narcissists. We like to achieve this because we have to control people, as you know. And also, of course, his inherent petulance, envy, jealousy, etc., is capitalized on by the way that she manipulates him. That she does this in order to control him, and it then has that impact upon his relationships with other people. The collateral consequences of this, it fractures his relationships with others, meaning they're less likely to be able to support him, which makes it easier for him to be controlled by her. But that's the opening salvo that we've come across from the information that has been leaked ahead of the publication of Spare. Plenty more for me to unpack and discuss with you, so don't go anywhere. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.